Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about enzymes, okay? So I'm going to start with the big picture so you can kind of understand why they're so important. Because we wouldn't exist without them. No living thing would, okay? So let's take the human body, right? We have a temperature of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That is our body temperature. Now, what do you think is happening to these poor blokes here? These are Napoleon's troops that froze in as they tried to take Moscow. Why would they freeze to death? What's going on? Why are these poor people dying? Could it be that it's too cold and that kind of cold affects their enzymes' ability to function? Because our enzymes have evolved to work at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So when it gets too cold, they're not going to work. And you're going to freeze to death. All right? Makes sense? Now, we also have the flip side of that. Yes, it's too cold for our enzymes. It's too cold. Now, the flip side is, what happens when it's a really hot, hot, hot day? This is called hyperthermia, when your temperature gets too high, right? Like on a very hot day, working out in the heat, things like that. Or maybe you have a fever because you're sick. The reason that is so dangerous is because your enzymes will no longer be able to work if they get too hot. They will do what's called denature, which means they can no longer perform their function. And when your enzymes can't function, they have so many reactions to do for you, about 100 or so per second, that if you're too hot or way too cold, too cold for a long period of time, you are in danger of dying because your enzymes can't function. That's why they're so important. Now, let's dig into enzymes a little bit. Here's what we know about enzymes, or what you should know by the end of this unit. Enzymes are proteins. That's the macromolecule, protein. Enzymes are a type of protein. Enzymes speed up reactions. RxNS is my abbreviation for reactions. They speed up reactions. How? How do they speed up reactions, you're going to ask me? Oh, they're called catalysts, right? Because catalysts speed things up. If you're the person who talks to your friends and gets them to be friends again sooner than if you just left them alone to work it out, then you are a catalyst because you got your friends together faster than it would have happened by itself. Catalyst is not just a biology definition, it's a life definition. So enzymes are catalysts because they speed up reactions. How do they speed up reactions? They do it by lowering what's called the activation energy. And I will show you some graphs in a little bit and we'll talk about that. Now, enzymes, they are also necessary for all of our body functions, just like in that last slide, right? Too cold, enzymes die. Too hot, enzymes die. Enzymes are working at about 100 reactions a second. And I read one quote that we do a combined 37,000 billion reactions. So on a cellular level, we're all really, really busy all the time. I saw a great t-shirt that I got for my nephew one time that said, I might look like I'm not doing anything, but I'm really quite busy on a cellular level. I thought it was really funny. Okay, now, enzymes going through all these reactions, bing, 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 100 a second, they remain unchanged. They do the reaction, open back up, do the reaction, open back up, do the reaction, open back up. They are unchanged after every reaction. The only thing that changes enzymes is when things get too hot or things get too cold. That's the only thing that changes their shape. If left at the temperature at which they function the best, they'll go on for a long time. All right. What are they affected by? Well, we learned from the last two slides, they are affected by temperature, right? They are also affected by concentration. If I have 100 enzymes present, as opposed to 2 enzymes present, am I going to get more reactions to happen? Sure am. Concentration affects enzyme rate. pH. Here's another amazing thing. pH. So the pH in your body, this is true with other living things as well, but the pH in your body is different in your mouth than it is in your stomach, than it is in your small intestine, than it is in your large intestine. And each enzyme works in that pH. You cannot take an enzyme out of one pH, let's say your mouth, and throw it into your stomach, which is really acidic. Your stomach is very low on the pH scale. In the 1.4, 1.5, it's hydrochloric acid. It's very acidic. So you can't take an enzyme from your mouth and throw it in your stomach and expect it to work. It won't. It'll get destroyed. And same is true if you take your enzyme out of an acidic environment and put it into a basic environment. Won't work. Enzymes have evolved to work in their specific pH range. Okay? And finally, which you all knew going into this one, temperature. Temperature affects pH. Okay, so let's talk about what this reaction rate looks like. Okay, here is a reaction. Do you recognize what this reaction is? We have the reactants that have a higher energy than the products have. This reaction is exergonic, okay? And this hump is the activation energy. That's the energy required for this reaction to happen. That is a big hill. Look at that hill. That's a big hill to try to get over. And this is how it would happen if we didn't have an enzyme. But who wants to have to climb that huge hill? No one. Your enzymes don't either. And that's how you have to think of it, as climbing a hill, because in order for a reaction to happen, you need to get over that hill. Now, that's a lot of energy. If we had to supply our body with that much energy for every reaction, we would not exist as living things, because we would not be able to take in that much nutrients. That many nutrients? We wouldn't be able to take in enough food. Okay? So, because it's a big hill, we have evolved these beautiful things called, what do you think? Enzymes. And this is what enzymes do. They lower the required energy for every reaction. So you see that activation energy required? It's no longer a very big hill. It's now a nice small hill. We can do that. That's doable. That's a lot less energy required for every one of these reactions. That's why enzymes are so critical to our body function. So this small hill is the activation energy when an enzyme is present. Okay, now the same happens with an endergonic reaction. Doesn't matter, enzymes are required for both. You have your reactants, you have your products. Here's your enzyme. It does the same thing. It's lowering the activation energy required. Okay? All right. Now, let's talk about the enzyme substrate model. Here is an enzyme. Looks like Pac-Man. Your enzymes are just big molecules with a space for its specific substrate. So it can look like anything, but this is easier for me to draw, so that's why I did it that way. And here's a substrate, right? The substrate is just a molecule that this specific enzyme is designed for, because every enzyme is designed for a specific molecule that it attaches to. Lock and key, okay? So this substrate comes on down, finds it, sorry about that, the substrate and enzyme find each other, they form this enzyme substrate complex, and then the reaction happens. And then the enzyme splits this beautiful substrate A into two products. And that's the reaction. It took one product or one substrate, and the enzyme did its little molecular enzymatic action and divided it into two products. And if you go on to higher biology or chemistry, you'll know exactly what happened and what bonds got broken. Okay, the enzyme, as I've already said, remains unchanged through this whole process. Now, what kind of reaction is this, where you start with one substrate and you end with two products? Do you remember what type of reaction this is? It is a catabolic reaction, where you take one molecule and you break it into two. Well, you unbond it. Really, you're not breaking it, but you through enzymatic action, you unbond it in some way, and so now you have two molecules. Okay? Now, it also works if you have two substrates, right? Because that was a catabolic reaction where you take a big molecule and you divide it into two products. But we can also take two substrates, right? Two reactants, and get them to become one product. And when you take two reactants that fit snug as a glove in their enzyme and form their enzyme substrate complex, you then create one product. Again, the enzyme is unchanged. What kind of reaction is that? Where you take two and you make one. My analogy is Lego building. Take two Legos, put them together, you have one bigger Lego. What kind of reaction is that? That is an anabolic reaction. Now, what will affect these enzymes? We talked about it a little bit ago. So let's see if you remember. Temperature, we remember temperature affects enzymes, their ability to function, it's a big one. pH affects enzymes' ability to function. And of course, I just like to do this, imagine if we had all of these enzymes around here, right? The more enzymes you have, the faster you're going to be able to make those reactions happen. So our third type of, the third thing that will affect enzyme function is concentration. And that's about it. That's enzymes, an enzyme substrate model in a nutshell. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions.